that need balancing, or an aeroplane or a boat or any vessel, we need to have balance. So I was asking myself, while vocation has really gone down, training has taken a big hit, etc. I asked myself, then which area can I devote myself more into? Then physical is one of them. So for the longest time, I've been giving excuses about, to maybe get fitter, etc. But anyway, to just cut the whole story short, a few years ago, we after 40, right, we are asked to have our annual checkup. So the doctor told me, you are actually having hypertension, and that's not good. And for the first time in my life, I was given prescription. Right, and it was a terrible feeling to know that I have to take the high blood, medicine every day. It's like a sentence to me, and it was a wake up call to me. So I asked myself, is this the kind of life I want to be in? And it might just be worsen. And I say, no, I wouldn't want to. So I know the pandemic was a bad thing, but in a sense, we want to bring out the best of a worst situation, isn't it? So I told myself, well, that's the best time to actually get myself back in shape again. For one, I really want to look at the physical side. So health, to be healthy again. Then secondly, you can't really be just healthy, you will be fit at the same time, isn't it? So I really made up my mind to become fit. And I've been training. I've been training, especially one of the speakers, I think 2 years back, at a near Christmas, talk about six packs. Then I told myself, for the longest time, I've been talking about this. And Nick, I want to pressure you soon, all right? So I told myself, I want to see a difference in my life. It's not just for the aesthetic, but to feel, better. So what I did was I really went into a training regime. I alternate days. I go to the gym, I swim, and I just want to crystallize everything I share. There are many lessons I've learned, but one of the most important, which is how I'm going to link to, are we going to prepare ourselves back to training again? One of the important lessons that I learned was that there was a very common enemy for myself that disrupt every goal I wanted to have. For example, I'm not very good in running. For those of you who run 2.4, Singaporean soldier man, right? 2.4, right? And people can run 10, 11, at least 12. I can't. I run 14 and 15 minutes, and that was very bad. That's really bad. I'm not good in running. So I told myself I need to improve in my running. Then secondly, pull up. All right. Younger days we can do pull up easy. Then now it's like, well, two or three, and then you can't go up anymore. I told myself, no, I want to do 10 at least. All right. I want to go back to my younger days, the kind. So I challenged myself with different parameters. And of course, the six packs, all right, six packs. I said, well, cannot be. People can do it. Why can't I do it? So I also went, and I do. So for every aspect of it, I realized there's one common enemy. And anyone guess what is the common enemy against all this? Anyone?
Ourselves?
Common enemy. Okay,
Ourselves?
What about ourselves? Which part of ourselves? Which part of ourselves? Affect the speed I can run, the number of pull-ups I can get, the six pack.
I am very
What is the
tired.
common enemy?
I'm really tired. I am
All
very
right.
tired.
The mind.
The common enemy, I realized that power is weight, excess weight. And of course, sometimes we call it fats, the fats, excessive, body fats around us that we don't really need. And it is more than just a physical thing. It's a lesson for me to understand in life. So to cut it short, I actually lost 10 kilo, all right, just within one year. All right. I did my workout, okay, I watched my diet. All right. I started taking protein powder. Okay. Like I said, there's a lot of lessons that I learned, but I want to just talk about this common enemy. All right. You see, because of the weight, I shed 10 kilograms. I realized I can run faster. Just think about it. Now, if I were to run and I hold, a 10 kilo dumbbell and run, I will definitely be slower, isn't it? Imagine I shed off the excess weight. And the same principles go for the pull up. And of course, the six packs. Now I can see a little bit of line coming out. Last time, it was one whole belly. I can start to see the line slowly coming out. And it's the same, the layer of fats just in front of our muscle. And most of us already have the six pack, right? But it is shielded by a layer of fat. So that was a common enemy against all the goals that I have. And of course, not to mention for health, excessive fats, the cholesterols in our blood, clotting, leads to heart diseases, and everything that comes along with it. What if there is, and I think there are, enemies towards us going back to training? Now, it is one thing to say, the landscape has opened up again, the legal side has opened up, and, psychologically people are changing. But the question is, the moment we enter back into training, will we be in our top form? Will we be the top trainers out there? For the longest time, our association have always say, go out there and transform lives, right? Isn't it? We push our trainers to the limits. We push ourselves to top organizations to do things that average trainers don't do. And it is not easy. It's just like bodybuilders, right? You want to be at the top. The question is, how hard are we training? But first of all, do we know what are our common enemies? So tonight, I want to pose these questions to all of us, in a hope that we will identify our unique enemies in our training vocation. What could it be? I just want to suggest one to you, okay? Then there can be other areas. And one of them is ego. I think for many of us, especially when we have trained for a long time, we have this ego, egoism that tells us that we are out there already. We have done this, we have done that, we have accomplished many things. Too often we look back at our success, we rest on our laurels, and we think that we are there. But we fail to remind ourselves that the landscape is always changing so quickly. So many things have been changing. And today, every now and then I look at the government tenders, the specification, what people are looking for, and realize what they are looking for has changed. And quite a number of things I have to tell you, I have to admit to you, I can't do anymore. I realize I have not evolved as fast as what the market is looking at. And as much as I hate to admit, there's this ego playing within us that prevent us to say that I want to learn more. I want to learn from other people, even people younger than me, people who are newer than me in the market. When we start to think like this, then we have actually met our own enemy, which is ourselves, Nick, you rightly pointed out. So you could have your own enemy as well. I hope that tonight, set some thinking for all of us, all right? And identify these things that can hinder us so that you can work towards it, against the enemy, work towards what you want. And hey, man, months down the road, I hope you're going to hit the market out there and we start transforming lives again. All right. So, Nick, back to you. I hope this means something to all of you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, David. Fortunately, I'm standing in MBS area where a lot of people are running up and down. I'm running myself. I still promise the thing that I owe it to you. Yes, we will see our six packs together. I promise that to you also. Thank you so much, David. Yes, indeed. A lot of us are always thinking that how to stay relevant, how to stay afresh. And tonight, we're going to invite all the way from USA, US Seattle. Why do I say that? Because of COVID. Otherwise, we will not make this possible because a lot of us wanted to do virtual training, so physical training. But come to think of it, because of COVID, we are able to do virtual. And so for this gentleman, to us it's 8 p.m. at Singapore timing. For him, it's 5:40 p.m. So you wake up very early just to share with us for one thing, and that's how to call the importance of effective new hire onboarding. As what David has mentioned earlier, are we able to learn even from new recruits also? Why do I say that? Does the organization sometimes struggle to engage your new hires, making them productive? Is an early overturn an issue? The impact of onboarding on productivity, engagement, and retention of your people is significant. After spending substantial time, effort, and money to acquire new staff, organizations and leaders might at times also focus too little on onboarding of their people. I must confess that I'm guilty of that too, because we have new colleagues who join us, but we don't focus on them at all. So tonight, we will discuss the issue involved with onboarding and outline best practices to help us integrate new staff in our organization more effectively. Our conversation will cover over the challenges involved with remote onboarding, planning, organization during the critical first few weeks of the employment, encounter, networking, setting expectations, available resources, and early career support. This speaker, as mentioned earlier, all the way from US Seattle, Mr. William, is a senior management professional in human resources, having involved with HR, talent management, and learning and development functions of domestic and international firms over for more than 20 years. So his expertise includes the creation and deployment of leadership development programs for a number of organizations. So without further ado, let's pass the mic over to William. Hi, William.
Thank you very much for that introduction. That's quite an introduction. I hope I live up to that over the next short while. So very happy to be here. and very envious of you. I have been roughly where you're standing now, and I can't wait at some point to get back to Singapore. It was a magical trip, and I'm looking forward to making it again at some point.
Definitely, as I mentioned to you earlier, Singapore just opened up only. So there's abundance of opportunities, and there's no reason for you to miss us out also in the training industry.
Well, I'll look forward to it. And as you said, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very honored to have an opportunity to be with you today and talking about onboarding. And as you mentioned, I'll share my presentation with you shortly. However, it's such an important area. You know, after, as you've mentioned, organizations are spending now so much time and effort in a war for talent that is global. And after spending all of this time and effort to recruit in people that we have confidence that are going to join and add value, sometimes we don't, with all the best of intentions, don't focus properly on the very important first few weeks of their employment and beyond, of course. But by looking at some best practices and perhaps some greater structure, hopefully as a training group, we will be able to, add that value and ensure that our people are productive and also retained early as well. So with that said, I'd like to go ahead and share my presentation with you. And of course, we'll go through some of this information today. So hopefully with any luck, you see the presentation now, is that correct? Wonderful, okay. Well, the hardest part of the presentation is done then, making sure the technology works, so wonderful. So Nick gave me a wonderful introduction, so I won't bore you with that again, but I have had an opportunity to be involved in HR and also managing training and talent management for organizations. And today, we want to talk about some of the challenges involved with successfully onboarding. Again, it's such a crucial time. We're going to go through some of those challenges and also some onboarding issues and best practices to consider as well. Hopefully, and as David mentioned, we all have something to learn from one another. And I think there was a famous poet who said, "In my walks, I realized that I can learn from any man." And you talked about ego and how important that is. As a training group, I think we're very sensitive to the fact that we can learn from anyone and that our learning journey is a lifelong journey as well. So we're going to hopefully give you some additional information, and you'll learn a little bit today along the way. And we're going to talk lastly about the resources involved with onboarding. So some of the things that may be available to you, and all you really need to do is to organize those resources successfully. So I want to start by talking about the implications of onboarding and the benefits of good employee onboarding. Now, you all are probably thinking of some of the answers, but of course, there's a huge number of benefits, and there's numbers of challenges as well. And the benefits to good onboarding, of course, include employee engagement, employee retention, early productivity, and cutting the time to productivity as well. And of course, there are reputational benefits. Companies that have a reputation for hiring wisely and onboarding effectively find it easier to recruit and retain people because quite simply their reputation is a resource. It's an asset to them that helps attract people. So I know that there's many of you throughout the globe, and you may not be able to share, but you all probably have thoughts about onboarding staff remotely. As David has mentioned, we've been involved in this world of Zoom and remote meetings for the last 2 years, and we're anxious to get back and have a little face-to-face contact again. And you all probably have experienced some challenges with onboarding in a remote environment. And a lot of these have to do with the sense of connectedness that people feel to the organization, networking as well, and enculturation. These are all things that we probably found it easier to do when we were sat face to face. And so we have to be very aware of how people are feeling when they're being onboarded, particularly when they're being onboarded remotely and they don't have a chance to sit down across the table from people in training and their boss and others. And that can lead to a sense of isolation. And when that happens, people don't feel a sense of connectedness to the organization. And of course, when they're not connected, they find it easier to walk away. And of course, we don't want that. We want people to be retained. So there's lots of implications, of course, to the business as well. Now, the financial costs of turnover can vary. And of course, we know estimates in HR vary widely, but it's generally accepted that the cost of each person leaving is probably between 6 and 18 months of salary. Now, those people that perhaps have a rarer skill set or are in senior leadership roles tend to cost more when they turn over. So there's lots of costs, of course, involved. Now, what are these costs? Well, there are the hard dollar costs, of course, the costs of recruiting, the cost of hiring, the cost of your manager interviewing, the cost of training. As much as we love to train new faces, we don't want to see new faces purely because of early turnover as well. So the biggest cost, of course, is lost productivity. Those new faces that come in excited simply aren't as productive early on. And we know that part of our role is to contribute to the shortening of the time to productivity, but they aren't to start with. So there's huge cost implications for turnover, including early turnover. Most would agree that during the first 6 months, people are only at a partial state of productivity. And a survey of over 600 CEOs done indicated that they felt it took over 6 months for people to begin effectively paying for themselves, the point at which their productivity exceeds their cost. So onboarding matters for quite a few different reasons. Now, the impression that we give when we onboard is critical as well. Employees who feel like they've had a negative onboarding experience are twice as likely to leave at some point in future. There's a saying that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And that is indeed what onboarding is about. It is about making a positive impression and ensuring early productivity and engagement. There was one survey recently done that indicated that 20% of new hires would not recommend their organization after going through onboarding. That's quite a big chunk. And if we think about lowering our turnover by just 10%, if we can capture better onboarding or more effective onboarding, we can help contribute to lower turnover. So hopefully I have set up the implications, the potential reasons for onboarding being an area of such focus. Now, I've outlined quite simply my opinion of HR and also training's role in the onboarding process. Without preempting this too much, my belief is that the hiring manager owns the onboarding process primarily. In other words, they own the experience of their new hire, and human resources and training provide valuable supporting roles. But the hiring manager, of course, having made the decision to hire that new face, ought to be accountable for the impression we leave during onboarding and properly organizing onboarding training. And that includes preparing for the first day of work, creating the onboarding plan in conjunction with HR and training, scheduling activities, and using the available resources. Onboarding is an organizational function. It's not one that should be delegated just to HR or just to training. This is an organization-wide issue, and HR and training play a valuable part in supporting this activity, but it should never be delegated away from the hiring manager who still owns the experience. So there are some pillars of onboarding, and I take this as David mentioned, we all can learn from others, and the best ideas are often stolen. So this comes from an excellent book on successful onboarding. And the main 4 activities or 4 pillars are introducing the new hire to the firm. What brands does the firm have? What is the strategic position of the firm? What's the direction? There are some basic things, without being experts on all of these. There's some basic outlining we can do so the new hire understands the organization that they're walking into and what today's issues are like and what tomorrow's direction or strategy is like. Now, importantly, and we all know, I think we all probably have a sense, at least in the training realm, that we have to orient people to our culture and also the values that we have, including values around performance. This is an area that sometimes organizations fall down in. There isn't enough emphasis on these areas. Now, relationship building and socialization is important too. Oftentimes, hiring managers immediately focus on skills-based training. What can I do to get my person on board doing the job as quickly as possible? And yes, that's important, but we can't forget that people do work through other people, right? We have networks, and that this is a relational business. So we have to make sure that we are relationship building. And then early career support is simply skills-based training, right? What are we doing early on to help people be productive? So when we think about that first pillar, about strategy communication, as an organization, early on, we want to talk about, well, what is our direction in the market? What's our strategy? Now, again, we don't have to know that in detail. We're not oftentimes in that executive suite, but the executive suite should have communicated that to us, and we should be able to at least provide an overview to our people of what our organization's strategy for success and growth is, what the business environment is like today, including any challenges that we have and where our position is in the market, and very importantly, how their role helps the team achieve. Work for most people is about making meaning, not money. We all, of course, have to pay the bills, but we all want to know that our work is significant. And when new hires come in, we want to help them connect what they do to the success of the organization. So what should new hires know about your company's brands if you happen to have different brands or different products? Well, one is, what do they represent? And what is the value proposition for customers? So if you have different brands or different services, what is the value proposition to customers? In what way do we add value or enhance people's lives? How do we differentiate ourselves from the competition as well? That's really important. People want to understand how what we do is different from the competition down the road or special. And again, what is our market position compared to the competitors? And again, circling back and helping new hires understand the role that they play in supporting the brands and the reputation of the organization is important. We need to set those expectations early. So in addition, I outlined socialization and building relationships. Now, this is an area probably in the training realm we're a little more sensitive to. That is our role. And of course, most in training, just talking to Nick and to David, one can see how enthusiastic our training colleagues are for helping others and how we know this is a relational business. That's important. And the organization needs to know that too. So as trainers, we have an important role to play to emphasize this during onboarding. We need to make sure that our new hires are making connections quickly before they question their decision to join. In other words, we need to help people make connections within the organization and outside as necessary to industry groups that we are part of, so they can feel a sense of connectedness, so they can understand the people that they need to interact with in order to be successful in their job and in order to feel a part of the team. Now, it doesn't take long for people to become lonely and isolated and anxious if they feel like they don't have a support system. And that's an important part that networks play early on when people are onboarded. If people only are connected to their manager, If there are communication issues, sometimes a manager explains a skill or an issue and a new hire doesn't quite understand without anyone else to go to gain perspective, it can feel a little lonely. So I'll pose a question. I know many may not have the ability to respond, but some do. How long does it take, do you think, for a new hire to determine whether they think the job is a career job or maybe just a holdover for them until something better comes along? Any thoughts?
1 week.
1 week? Yeah. Most managers that I ask say it's not very long. I have had people say it's a week. Most of them will say within a month. It's not long. And we need to remember that. And I think that's the value of structuring onboarding carefully, because we probably have no more than 30 days before, and as you quite rightly said, sometimes not nearly as long, before a new hire says, I'm not sure this is the right place. I don't have a great first impression about the organization in terms of its professionalism and how well my onboarding is structured. They begin to say, this isn't going very well. And so we need to remember that we are being interviewed even after someone joins, because they can always vote with their feet. Now, there's been plenty of studies done worldwide about the importance of having connections at work. The Gallup organization, which is a fairly well-known organization that manages surveys of employee engagement, indicated that people that don't feel like they have a best friend at work. Now, best friend doesn't necessarily mean socially, but it does mean a close confidant that they can rely on. And Gallup studies shown that most people who feel like they have a best friend at work were engaged. And only a small number actively unengaged. In other words, their body's at work, but their mind is somewhere else. And perhaps they're detracting from their teams rather than adding to them. People who did not feel like they had a best friend at work, interestingly enough, only 8% of those surveys felt they were engaged. The vast majority were unengaged. So this tells you how important it is to connect people with others early on. Our new hires are coming in with a great deal of enthusiasm for their job, but it's fragile. They're enthusiastic, but they're also feeling a sense of stress and anxiety over coming into a new job and a new organization with people they don't know. So how do we build those relationships, and what are the different connections for people to make? Well, there's a number of them. The first are internal, personal, and professional networks. Well, what is the difference between those two? Simply, it's that internal professional networks are getting people connected to the other people they need to do their jobs successfully. So it could be their boss, working peers in their teams. It could be those individuals who are internal customers. Now, internal personal networks are more social networks, those people that perhaps your new hire would enjoy interacting with. Maybe it's people that have common interests inside or outside of work. But getting people networked in to the fabric of the organization is important. Now, we can't forget external networks as well. We may have industry groups, very much like this one we're talking tonight, that people can get networked into. We all probably have some form of industry network. And the value of that for new hires is that by getting networked in like this, they can bring back innovative ideas to their company. And although it is rare, on occasion, of course, you are asking someone to move for a job, that they are actually relocating themselves and their family. And if that rare occasion happens, you can't forget that people need to get networked into their local community, that they need to understand what resources are there to help they and their families settle in and to feel a sense of being at home, because we all have probably experienced expatriates who come to work and moved and who haven't settled in. and they've left their job as a result. So these external networks do matter. So onboarding has to be interactive. We know this, and this is why we network. This is why we help people socialize and settle in, because it's more than just about teaching them skills. And in the age of coronavirus, we have of course experienced challenges with this, because people are networking only through Zoom right now. Only recently have many organizations and countries started to open back up, and we're having more face-to-face interactions. So we need to remember, we can't culturally onboard people just using a computer. They will not get onboarded by taking 20 or 30 online courses. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things most new hires will tell you that they don't like about onboarding. They do not want to take 20 courses instead of interacting with people who can help them network around the organization. So remember that, make it interactive, ensure that people get introduced to teachers, for example. Make sure that you have two-way conversations early and often with line managers. It's much easier to scale back conversations than to initially not have them often enough. Because by the time 30 days goes by, it may be too late for that new hire for us to recover that new hire's impression. Talk about culture. Talk about the cultural values of the organization, and ask about the cultural values where the new hire came from. That's important too, because they may be stepping into a different culture, and we're going to need to have to help them sort of integrate and adapt to this new culture. So speak clearly about culture. Oftentimes we think that new hires will just get it, that somehow they will just, by osmosis, they will learn the new way of acting and performing. It's better that we talk overtly about our cultural values so people don't step on minefields. They don't make mistakes in the organization that are hard to recover from, because we also know that new hires only have perhaps a few weeks to make a good first impression on their new boss and the organization. So talk about what the culture is like in the organization and in your team, right? Every team has a culture. So I mentioned about performance values, and this is also really important for line managers to talk about. There's lots of different values we have around performance. For example, productivity and work pace. What output are we expecting? If a new hire comes to us and says, I have this one work product done and it's perfect, that's great. But if we expected 5, we have a problem with the amount of productivity. And so we need to explain these things to our new hires. Are we walking? Are we sprinting in terms of pace? Importantly, talk about priorities. People should always know what's the most important thing that they should be doing at any given time. What's second most important? What's third? And although these things change, line managers should be talking about this, and people should always have a clear sense of priorities. If you have cultural traditions around how people interact and how they interact with colleagues and customers, spell that out, right? If the interaction is more formal and more written, let them know, right? If people are prone to giving long reports and executive management doesn't have the patience for that and wants a graph, tell them. We want people to be able to adapt in how they interact, and work procedures as well, right? How do we process work? How do we process complaints if people have complaints within the organization? And introduce them to the important stakeholders, the people who are going to judge the new hire's performance. So in your organizations, what tools exist for early career development? In other words, training. Besides the expertise of all the people on the the video today, what other resources exist in your organizations? Any thoughts? Well, there's probably more tools than you would expect, and probably more tools than our line managers think of. But you may have a mentoring program in your organization. If you don't, that's fine. There still can be informal mentoring that goes on. You may have a 360-degree feedback process. You probably have performance and employee development goals, right? We all have goals for our role, and there's no reason not to set goals for new hires in terms of both their performance and their development. So we can't forget that what gets measured gets done. And so allowing people to understand how their role is measured, how we judge success is important. You might have career pathing, you may have individual development plans, you may have training plans and training curriculum, regular performance coaching and one-on-one meetings that managers should be having with their people. That is a tool for early career support. It is common for managers, you probably have seen this as well, with the best of intentions to spend a lot of time hiring and then to be relatively disengaged from the onboarding process. They delegate that to someone else, or they don't meet often enough. It's really important to tell managers, meet early and often. You can always scale these back, but people are going to feel more anxiety and need more help early. You can make those every other day meetings once a week, perhaps after a month, and less often as needed. You have learning management systems, the intranet interactive training. You all have probably used job shadowings and meetings with stakeholders as well. So there's actually a lot of resources that we have as organizations. And really, it's a matter of just organizing and scheduling these resources effectively. Now, I posed a rhetorical question here, which is the benefits of providing all of these to your new hire, which we really have also outlined early in this discussion. And that is earlier productivity, a lower time to productivity, early success, which is important, and better engagement and retention. And we want those things, of course, as an organization. Now, it's important to remember that people want a sense of early success. There's nothing that breeds success more than success, right? It's contagious. When people feel good about the work that they do and they feel confident, they want to feel more of that. And the best way to do that, of course, is to provide them another mountain to climb. So give people a sense of early success, right? And ensure that we are sort of stepping that out for them. We're not, I think David used the analogy of running. So I'm a runner as well. And we all know that, you don't ask someone to run an Ironman triathlon who's never run a 10K, right? We want to give people a challenge that they can conquer and allow them to move on to the next thing. So it's really important that we don't overwhelm our new hires early on. Give them an early sense of success, then move to a slightly bigger challenge. Now, if I can ask, what are the important activities that we need to worry about before a new hire comes on during their first day? Any thoughts? Anything you worry about or issues to take care of before someone comes on board on day one?
Yeah, workstation.
Yep, physical work area. Make sure that it's all prepared.
Bill, are you talking about during the interview and they have not signed on to come on, or are you talking about they decided to come aboard? You are talking about during the interview?
We're actually talking about after we've offered and a candidate has accepted, what are the things that we're doing before they arrive on day one for their new job? What are the things
Okay.
that what we're preparing for them? So you mentioned equipment and workspace, absolutely. Creating the schedule of onboarding activities. And again, my personal opinion, and of course they vary, is that the manager should be driving this and human resources and training experts should be helping, right? But what we do in training is a piece of a larger onboarding experience. So the manager needs to be creating that schedule of activities. What does week one look like? What does day two of week two look like? The more we schedule these things out, the more professional we look to our new hire. And it's wonderful to be able to hand a new hire a schedule because they're wondering, they have some anxiety about this, and we can say, here's your schedule of activities, we'll go through this. But yes, we're organized and we're prepared for you. Welcome. And we all know what we'll be doing with you, during your first couple of weeks. Determining who will be involved in onboarding is important. Who's going to be training? Is this mentoring or job shadowing with teammates? Are professional trainers involved in delivering structured training? Are there other meetings that they'll be having? And what does the stakeholder list look like? Now, I've referred to this a couple of times, and a stakeholder list is nothing more than a list of people that it's going to be important for the new hire to connect with. You might have a list of, the boss, the mentor, 2 or 3 peers, internal customers, but it's probably a short list, but a list of people that are going to need to build relationships with this new hire for the new hire to be successful. Now, if you don't have a process for this, that's okay, right? This is a matter of really just thinking about these resources and organizing them a little bit to help managers effectively prepare for day one. It can be nothing more than a spreadsheet with days and times that can be filled in by the manager. And a stakeholder list looks just like this. You can list the name and position of people the new hire needs to connect with and why it's important for the new hire to build the relationship. So once new hires come on board, we all know that it's important for us to get to certain tasks early. Do you have any thoughts about the most important things that we take care of on week one with a new hire? Is there any tasks or anything that you cover during the first week?
As in we do for them, or because what came to my mind was maybe after the first week feedback to hear the thoughts of the hire, how they are settled in.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any other tasks we take care of during the first week?
I believe the most important thing is to make them feel at home, introduce them to the various heads of the department. So if they want to find something, they know who to go and ask.
Yeah, really important, isn't it? New hires want to feel welcomed as quickly as possible. We want that, and it's critical. Oftentimes it's a tour around the site, introducing them to a few people, telling them this is where you find the break room, and various basic tasks that just put their mind at ease. And that is an incredibly important function. And oftentimes managers think about this a little less maybe than they ought to, right? It's about, let's get them trained. We need to give them skill-based training so I can have Bob sit down in his seat and be productive quickly. And there's time for that. And the more we're making your new hire comfortable, the better they're going to feel. And in the end, there's only so much new information they can take in the first week anyways. So during the first week, you're probably doing a number of important things, as you mentioned. You're explaining what the onboarding schedule looks like. You may be reviewing the job description. If they're not clear, some managers may have covered this effectively in the interview, some not so much, but go through the job description and explain how the job is measured. These are the metrics that we use to judge success. There might be a learning plan. There could be a mentor week one to assign. Explaining how the job contributes to success is important. We want people to connect doing the job well to the company's success really, really early. And we discussed some of these other items, including networking and introducing them around. It's critical the first week. The first few weeks, you're probably doing a few different things, but certainly there's regular one-on-one and coaching sessions that the manager is having, tracking learning plan progress and feedback as well, absolutely, and you mentioned that. Having those discussions with stakeholders, job shadowing, training, all those sorts of things that we're well aware of in the training world. But again, it's important to remember, don't over-rely on e-learning. New hires crave interaction early on because they want to be told as they're coming in, you're doing okay, things are progressing along. We appreciate you being here. If you don't survey your new hires, you may want to think about it, having a formal way of surveying new hires. You'll often find that the impression is pretty positive early on, but survey them again at 6 months. They may give you some feedback about what was missing early on, that they wish they would have known certain things, for example. So surveying them does help. I have thrown a lot of information at you. I know I am an evangelist around onboarding. I think that this is an unbelievably incredible area that organizations don't necessarily focus on enough. And in training, we probably, it feels near and dear to our heart. And I think that there needs to be a partnership led by the organization and led by the line manager to make this successful, and for there to be accountability. And what I often mean by that is, does the organization measure new hire turnover? Do they measure early engagement? Do they survey new hires as well? So I will stop there, having thrown a lot of information at you. Thank you for allowing me to do so, and ask if there's any questions or comments about onboarding.
Yes, thank you, Will. That's very useful. We're going to open the time to any questions. Anyone, you have feedback or you have questions for Will, this is a good time. And I'm sure if we'll be doing training, we would have come to know that onboarding is indeed something very, very important, because some of the issues arising from poor or non-onboarding is a result of certain training that we have to infuse, and it makes the whole process more difficult. So anyone has any questions? Come, anyone?
Will, you mentioned about survey. After a while, it's good to have do a survey with the newcomer. Whose responsibility is it? Is it the manager who hired this guy, or is it the HR? The reason I ask you this is, some people will give feedback better if it's not his own boss that is asking him for feedback. For example, if the HR department asking me, how's your stay so far? Any feedback? Some people feel it easier to give feedback if it's not directly connected to the boss. What is your suggestion?
I agree with you. I think we actually pushed out surveys electronically through our HRIS, or our learning management system. So it was an online survey, and it was administered by the HR department. And the feeling was that we were more of an independent third party, and we could also give that feedback early to both the training department and the manager if the feeling was that things weren't going as well as they could have. I would encourage organizations not just to think about an online survey, though, that in-person discussion helps. So in addition, you might push out an online survey at 6 weeks, but for example, at 30 days, someone from HR or training, I mean, I've seen both happen, might have a brief call or a brief meeting to say, how are things going? You know, everything going okay? Most of the risk isn't around the new hire when they're in onboarding training. Typically when that's happening and they're there doing structured training, perhaps with the trainers, they probably feel pretty good about it. The risk happens when they're handed off from training to their line manager and now they're doing the job. That handoff, there's always a lot of risk for how the new hire is feeling. And so I would suggest that the discussions that take place, you know, that you don't push out the survey or have the discussion until they get to their job, you know, until they get to the floor and they begin work. Because at that point, they'll be able to give you feedback about how well onboarding has prepared them for the new job. Agree with you, though. It shouldn't be the manager that's managing those surveys.
Great. Thanks, John, for the questions. Anyone else? Questions for Will?
Will, I have another question for you. Sorry, I'm
Sure,
asking
John.
you too many questions.
No worries, John. Yeah.
You know what? During an interview, especially when you are hiring somebody on a senior level, do you think it is very good in order for him to make up his mind whether to join this company or not, to give him a very short tour of the company? For example, bring him to the production area and so on, a very quick tour and come back. At least you have an idea how the company looks like. Do you think it's a good idea, or because you have to interview many people, this will seem like it's it's a repeated task and it's not easy? Because I always see interview is connected between the interviewer and the interviewee across the table, and that's it. Don't you think it's a good idea for a more senior people to bring him around the company and say, this is where you will be working if you are joining us?
I do. I'm a big fan of realistic job previews. I think early turnover, one of the causes of early turnover is the fact that the new hire has expectations for what the job and the organization are like, and reality is different. That, you know, in interviews, we're putting on our best face as an organization. And reality is sometimes different. And I think when you get to the point, and I grew up, I started in the recruiting area before branching out in HR. And, you know, I think we really owe it to new hires. We owe it to the candidate that we are serious about hiring. You know, when we get to the point where they're finalists, take that tour. Absolutely. Show them what the work environment is like, show them what the people are like, introduce them. We want people to get a sense of this is what you're getting into. If you come on board, you know, there are wonderful things about our organization, but there are challenges. Nothing's perfect. And I think that sense of disappointment that new hires have when they feel like they have been sold something that isn't reality, it fuels early turnover and disappointment. And so I'm a big fan of doing exactly what you just said, John.
Great, thanks. Do we have one more question? I was just looking at Kasi, yeah. So Kasi, you actually no, you don't have. All right. So not to worry, because we will, the second part of it, I think we are going to have something that's pretty linked to what you've just shared also. But before that, we want to officially thank you, and whatever you have shared is really good. It once again really affirmed the importance of onboarding. Sometimes we just get so, I mean, companies in general, we go into training, we know they get so entrenched in the daily operations, and people just forget about how to start it right. And it is the people that count, isn't it? So once again, you have affirmed that, and now I know who to refer to when my clients have issues with turnover. All right, I don't do onboarding, so I'm going to point it towards you. I'm sure that it will be the safe hands. Now, for the rest of us, and we're really still staying here, we're going to shift into what we call the open sessions. That way we can talk about anything regarding training, so as to help trainers in general. And I think it is very nice today that we're going to use a real example. So, Will, your specialty is in onboarding. So we're just going to just dive right into what you're doing in your world of onboarding business, rather the training business of onboarding. So we just want to open this. Maybe I'll just start it off as in some of the things that we face as challenges in getting training businesses, for example, right? We are speakers, coaches, etc., and all this is to get into training itself. We are trainers, unless we have publicity or marketing team that really operates independently. We many of us have to do it ourselves also. Or we have to look into it. After all, we are the trainer, we are the specialist. So we realize that the business of training itself is the challenge. So the question is, what are some of the rejections or resistance to training that we often are encountering? And so particularly, we're going to just dive into what you're doing now. So I'll just start off an example. Then later on, anyone, please just feel free to come in. So are there like resistance things that you can anticipate that people will close the door to even consider, accepting this so-called onboarding project, right, from you, for example? I'm going to start with an example. In my training, I realized probably more than 10, 15 years ago, or even more, all right, when I train in a group, typically the new hires make up less than 10% of the group in the whole room. Very low, sometimes less than 5%. Sometimes we don't have new hires in the whole room. I remember those days. But in the past 5 years or so, you know it. It is quite shocking. I see the statistics have changed. It is quite common. I mean, maybe for the rest, I'm not sure, but for my experience, on the average, it is 30% of them are new hires. That's quite shocking, and this is important to me because when I do training, I need to know their profile so that I can, understand and meet their needs, and understand where they're coming from. So 30% has been quite the norm for the longest time, and this is the sensing I have. So I wonder whether this is also useful for the business that you're getting when you talk to them, because I realize there's a mindset shift in the hiring managers, whether it's on the HR side or the line managers themselves. To them, for example, they'll tell you millennials, they work 2 to 3 years, If they work 3 years, you are very lucky, because there are people who will not stay. No matter what you do, they will not stay, because it is just them. Don't take it upon yourself. Okay, they are just the culture now. They need to move from place to place, and this is the kind of thing they do. So the mindset has changed. So it has become a systemic issue. Or this turnover has become a systemic issue. The mindset is like, it's going to be like this: do or don't do. So why waste time? Why waste the effort to spend resources, money on onboarding when this is going to be a norm? But let's put into our system that this is going to be a norm, and then we have process to take care of it, and then just let it take place. So is this actually one of the challenges you are facing when you talk to some of them? Do they have such mindset? I probably want to ask you this first. Yeah.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think a lot of the rationalizations are the same as with training in general, right? Well, the reason we don't want to invest is we need that person sat in the seat being productive as soon as possible. So we don't want to invest in all of this extra onboarding stuff that you're doing to socialize and acculturate. Seems like a waste of time. Just teach them the skills and put them in the seat. So it's time away from productivity. Same argument we get for all sorts of training. Yes, you will hear, which is again the same weak rationalization. I think as you've heard from managers. Well, why train them? They'll just leave anyways. Well, yes, but if you don't train them, you can guarantee that they're going to leave because they're going to leave to go get training somewhere else. So there's two reasons you do it. You train to make people more productive and happy while they're with us. And productive, happy people actually tend to stay longer, right? Not a big surprise. And we remind them that the investment allows allows them as managers in the organization to be more successful, right? Bottom line financial results or productivity results, and that we want to slow turnover. Yes, people will leave, but you can't throw up your hands and anticipate that. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy then if you say, well, I'm not going to invest in training. Do what you can, and what you're going to find is people are more productive while they're there. They won't turn over as quickly. And if they do leave, they leave on good terms, and they probably say nice things about you in the organization. So it's easier to recruit and less painful. So,
Right.
so yeah, it's a challenge, but we have to remember, I think, those managers that so carefully interviewed, we have to say, give us an extra week. For example, if you just organize training and allow us enough time, what you're going to get is someone whose productivity ceiling is higher. Don't rush them into the seat just for its own sake. We're going to get you someone that's more ready if you give us a little time.
Right. This is great. I concur with you so much, and I believe we have to be very firm. I think the good thing about this discussion is we want to anticipate the kind of resistance, the mindset that some of them already have. So the moment we know this is the kind of mindset they have, we enter the door, right head on, addressing them. And so as you are sharing, I just thought that if I were you, one of the things that I really want to go in and be very clear and firm is to challenge. Actually, it's not true. It is not true that millennials will, want to change their jobs 2 to 3 years. This myth has been going on for the longest time. It is true that there is a culture that people are less, they think less, to throw their letter, all right, compared to 10 to 15 years ago. However, it is not true that everyone does that. There are still many millennials. There are many young generation who will love to stick on to the job if they like it. So if only they will turn that mindset, to the correct factual ones, then they will be more open up. So I thought, in your evangelistic, outreach, your books and all this, if you once again can be the authority and let them know that this is not true, I think it really helps, so that people will continue to say no, I will continue, because there are people who will stay. But the other part of it is also true. You're right. Say it is true that some just want to go out and try something else, right? You are right. They will come back, because if you are good, you onboard them well, they have a good impression. They may leave, and then it won't take them long to come back and say this is still the best. And by the time they come back, guess what? Because of your great onboarding, the job of all the people, they're going to settle in very fast because they have been there before. So all in all, they will be a win. Win when people stay, win when people leave and come back again. So it is a win-win for them. So I thought, this is really a good proposition and a change of mindset to help them overcome the resistance and, the rejection for such projects. Yeah. Okay, great. Anyone else? Come. Anything? I think this is very useful. Okay, we are talking about very real industry challenges. Anyone? Any questions regarding training?
Actually,
Whether it's
David,
related to-
when you
Yes.
mentioned that about mindset, I can recall my own experience. That's very, very long time ago. When I was a general manager of my company. So my boss spoke to me. He said, John, let us send this guy for overseas training, sometimes for 1 year, sometimes for 2 years, away from Singapore, and the company sponsor them. So being a general manager, I was supposed to draft out an agreement and so on. So I wanted to put a clause and say that, hey boss, you send this guy for 2 years, we miss him for 2 years, and then the company spend so much on him. When he come back, we have to buy him somewhere, right? We have to tell him that he cannot live for another 1 year or so. I was surprised at the answer my boss gave. You know what he said? Why, John? Why you want to do that? If we train him, it's for our own good. I said, yes, but then if he wants to leave, then his answer was very profound. John, if a person wants to leave, it does not matter. Even if you want to restrain him, he will still leave if he has made up his mind. So what does it matter? And then he mentioned one other thing. Maybe he wants to leave. It's not maybe because of the job, but maybe it's because of the way we treat him. So if we treat a person nice and well, I don't see any reason why a person wants to leave. And then if you train him so that he will be more productive, even if he leaves, he can be productive in another company that he's going to if they are doing the similar thing. So I think you are right. It's a mindset. If you have this type of mindset, you know, people will appreciate it. And even people, when they think of going to leave, they may want to stay behind because this is the right company. It thinks about me, thinks about the future, thinks about even the nation also.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. You reminded me when I was working for a few corporates. You will know better, okay, because it's your daughter, John. I remember having staff that move from companies to companies with me. Sometimes it's really how we treat them, right? Yeah, it's how we treat them. They remember who are their mentors, who are the one who took care of them, and they actually follow them also. Yeah, you're so right about treating people well. It's so important. And that's the essence of onboarding. I think what Will is sharing with us. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else come? Anything? Any challenges in the marketing of your training business? Anything at all? Anyone else? Cameron, Phil, Kane? You all can take your time. Actually, I wrote down quite a number of things for you. Okay, anyone first? 10 seconds before I launch the second one. We have only about 5-10 minutes more only. Can you have something, right? Karthik?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I was hiring this.
A bit louder, please, Karthik. Yeah.
Okay. So can you hear me? Can you
Okay,
hear me
okay,
now?
okay.
Okay, good.
Go ahead.
So I was hiring this person. Okay, like a person to help me do some flyers, to like a freelance person to do some flyers. Okay, I have the design, I have all the contents, everything. So the person's job is to basically me to do the flyer up. Okay, and okay, so the flyer. So the thing is, when I'm trying to when I'm giving the person the responsibility to do it, let's say in 2 days. Okay, and the person has been telling me that, okay, she has done a previous flyer which was very good, and she did it for some other reason, not to do with my company. Okay, she has done it, and it's done in like 3 hours, and it's very good. So I said, I like this standard for this flyer. Okay, and she said, okay, we have a good discussion about what is the content. All the contents are in front of her, everything is there. She takes 1.5 days, 2 days, right? Then comes back and says that, oh, I had something else to do, so I couldn't do this. And I am trying to think now whether, based on what you guys have said, did I not speak to her properly, or did I is she just having a bad attitude, or what is it? You know, or should I even bother going? So it's a very difficult situation.
I don't really know what your question is. Are you really asking whether you are the one responsible for the outcome of her
Yes.
performance?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I think given the limited information we have, no, like, a lot of things can go wrong, and I would like to err on the side, knowing you. I doubt so. I think you are a very specific person, and I think you're clear and you're a quite nice person. So I doubt it. So don't beat yourself up. Sometimes it's just their own issues, their own challenges, and this is quite common among freelancers, especially those who are just doing jobs. You don't know what kind of challenges they're facing. So
Okay, so what I actually
your,
did was I
yeah.
just let the person, I give the person another deadline to prove themselves. Okay,
Okay.
but in the meantime, on my side, I'm going ahead with my own version of what I have first, and if that person does it correctly, then we can have a version 2. There's no problem about that. So that's my
Okay.
response to that. You see. Okay, so the thing is, should I be bothering about that person from now on, or just look for someone else?
Oh, so that's really a good question, and these are very difficult questions. Sometimes we make as do we see ourselves as a leader at that point, or do we see ourselves as a business person? The business person will make a very simple decision. The show must go on. So they will do whatever they can to just move the business forward. They will find another person who will get the job done. But if we see ourselves as leaders, as people developers, I think It's a painful road. It's a longer route. You want to go back to the person and help the person achieve what you think the person is more capable of. So you have to decide, which identity or which role
Which
you want to
path I want to
play.
take? Yes.
Yes,
Right.
yes, 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 yes. It's
Thank
tough,
you so
isn't it?
much, David. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. It's
It's
really
it's
tough.
it's interesting because I was on the leader road for quite a while, and if you put it that way, mentoring, retraining, teaching, guiding,
Right.
So sometimes you get this, but hey, we need to get things moving in Hello. Yeah.
It's true. So the balance is also important. The balance is
Thank you
so
so much
important.
for putting it
Sure.
together. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Will, are you still there, Will? I I I don't see Will's video there.
I am still here.
All
Sorry.
right.
Absolutely.
Great. No problem. Okay. So if I'll just go on to the second related subject for relating to yours, okay. And anyone else have anything, please come in. These are all related to how we run the business and all this, and I hope it can be useful and transferable to some of us also. And this second thing that I wrote down while you we were sharing is looking at how business some people expand horizontally, vertically, whatever direction we call it, but essentially is to expand the scope, because sometimes we realize that our training sometimes is really hindered by other parts of what the company do, isn't it? And in Will's case, he has mentioned it. The interviewing itself. Even before they come on board, some things have already taken place, and it is so true. In fact, I concurred so much with what Will had just said. The first impression counts, and what I wrote down was the first impression actually doesn't start even at onboarding. It starts way at the hiring process. So how do they put up the job advertisement? It starts there, because the job advertisement, the way it's structured, already tells people the culture of the company, already tells people the values that people uphold, right? Isn't it? But so sometimes people don't even come for the interview or apply for the job because of what they see. Say, oh, the whole impression I get about the company is like this. So I thought, for Will's business, Will uh, is so apt, and you are more than qualified to actually expand, beyond onboarding. Maybe you get another person or yourself to do it. Is to really look at their hiring process also. Their publicity, how they put up the advertisement, how they put up the job, the videos, how they phrase their all the writings. Everything must sync even with the onboarding process, because it doesn't make sense for people to come in through the HR and then go into a beautiful onboarding system. And the problem I see is this: if the reverse is true, meaning that they have such a nice publicity and advertisement, then when they come in, the onboarding is lousy, or is if not there, then it's a road shock, right? They will go away. But the worst part is, if you have such a good onboarding, yet the publicity is so bad, the advertising is so bad, good people are not even coming in, then we waste the good onboarding process that's been built here. So I'm just thinking, if Will has the capacity of bandwidth, you are more than capable of taking on the role, to have oversight and to coach them, so that the both will come together as well. What do you think, Will? What do you think?
I really view talent management as a continuum. They're not distinct areas of saying, well, it's recruiting, it's onboarding, now it's performance management.
That's right.
And in the organizations or in the talent management functions that I've overseen, it's exactly right. You have to, and John mentioned this, is you want to be real about what you're showing. You want to be genuine, or people will be disappointed, and you have to be consistent. So you can't onboard if you don't have new hires to onboard. So you've got to generate candidates, and you've got to do that by managing your employer brand, right? And employer branding is incredibly important. So you have to tell new hires about, this is who we are, this is our values and beliefs, these are our products, these are how we add value to other people's lives. And we have to remember that, I said new hires are very sensitive. They're hypersensitive to everything they see. Well, candidates are as well. And if candidates are treated, we've all probably experienced it, where you've been through interview processes that take too long, seem indecisive, are unprofessional, lack organization. Well, they're all indicators of what the organizational culture is like, right? And people will opt out. But if you're genuine about those things, what you want are people saying, I'm coming in with my eyes wide open. Fundamentally, I understand. And you want people opting out as well. You want other people saying, yeah, this isn't for me. Because the worst thing that can happen is we hire someone who then immediately leaves because the match was poor. So I've always said to my people that recruiting, we have two successes. You hire the right people and you don't hire the wrong people. Either way is okay. And if I have people that opt out of the process where my recruiters say it's okay, they opted out, that's a victory for us. That's okay. Because I want people who are 100% in, or at least open, when they come into the organization.
That's great. Good. Thank you for affirming that. So what we have looked at for the rest of us, okay, you might not be doing onboarding like Will, but think about the kind of topics that you're doing. Will you be able to expand the scope for the benefit of the company, for the benefit of yourself also? Because whatever you're doing is really directly related to who is passing on the buck, passing on the baton to you and who you're passing on to. So think about expansion. So we have seen how it really thanks Will for all your sharing allows the triggering of our thoughts, how we can move and improve ourselves. So this is about expanding our value proposition from what we are doing. So this is the second one. The first one, that's what we talked about, was changing mindset, right? Changing mindset is very important for us to enter into the business to begin with. All right. So anyone else? Because I have three. Anyone else? Anything? Okay, I'll just share the last one. Okay, and another thing that triggered me while we were sharing was that I'm not sure you have read recently on the news about Elon Musk. You all know what is his next big thing that he said will be bigger than the EVs, the electric cars. Have you all read? Okay, he is now looking at the next big thing, which he said is as early as 2023, which is next year. All right, it's very fast. It's not SpaceX, it's humanoid. Humanoid. All right, he's going back to his robot again. All right, and he seems like he's going to pour everything into it. But the gist of it that is relevant here is that he said that it is going to really replace a big part of the workforce. All right, but if you really read in between what he shared and all this, he differentiated something. He said it will take place, but it will take place only on one segment. It will take place for job roles that are repetitive, that are boring, for example, and also those risky ones. So these are jobs that people don't want to do. So he will want to have the AI come in and the robots and to really replace all these roles, and which is true. So I'm not going to go into the details. You can just Google and read up about it. So at the same time, when I read about that and think about what Will has shared, I'm also thinking about what we can learn from this. So what I wrote down was targeting the right profile. Targeting the right profile. And as we look at it, I'm just thinking, when we look at onboarding, sometimes I'm thinking, I may be wrong also, Will, please correct me. I think there are certain roles which companies will really want to invest. Not that some people are more important and some are less, but it's really the nature of the roles. So I'm just thinking, who are the people they really want to onboard? Maybe it's more for people who are thinkers, people who are strategists, people who have certain capacity that robots cannot replace. Just like Elon Musk is thinking. So these are the people we really want to keep, because it takes time to keep good people who are valuable. These are people who are not so easily replaced. So if we take time to groom them, and they take roots in our company, then we save the cost, we save the productivity, everything that Will has said. But there are certain roles, like for example, operators, people who are just administrators, file keepers, roles that are really mundane, they are really can be easily replaced. Take a few days, you can just totally let the person sink into the job. And if these are the people, then they probably are not our target group. So I'm just thinking that Will's nature of his business also have a certain target group. So he needs to go in either at the right organization or within the organization at the right department or the right group, the right teams. Otherwise, we get the kind of resistance again from HR and all. Of course, those roles we don't want to on board. So we want to be very specific in our training business to know the target profile that we are hitting, so that we are like snipers, not just machine guns shooting, wildly hoping to, kill something, but snipers knowing who we are going for and be very clear about that. Yeah, so that's what I pick up from Will as well. Will, what do you think, Will? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think just like any other aspect of talent management, we can't be all things to all people. And we know the reality is in organizations that there are certain positions that strategically have more value or are more difficult to replace. And so when I'm looking at onboarding, firstly, as you've mentioned, is you've got to find out where the patient is sick. Right. And within organizations, you don't say, I have a stomach illness, so, let's talk about fixing your shoulder. So, you've got to find out, okay, if it's onboarding, tell me about that. And of course, we're asking questions to gather information, then to come in and say, okay, well, I've got a solution to your problem. And if it's, tell me about your turnover. Well, early turnover is a problem. Okay. Tell me about that. Where is early turnover a problem? Oh, okay. How is that affecting your organization negatively? And you don't have to everyone deserves basic induction training, right? Basic orientation. But beyond that, there may be some roles where you're saying, okay, here's an onboarding structure and plan. And within organizations, I've done that. There are certain commonly hired for jobs. They are revenue producing in the heart of what the organization does, or they're more difficult roles. Technical specialists and leaders, you want to have a good onboarding plan, because if you're bad at it, you get to onboard more often, and no one wants that, right? You want to onboard only as often as necessary. So you're exactly right.
Great, thank you. I've learned so much tonight. Thank you. Just, by listening to a different domain, and then, just seeing what transferable, lessons we can learn. So anyone final questions or final input before we close the session for the night? Anyone? All right. So thank you. This is the last day for March, 31st of March. It has been a long month, and really very exciting for Singapore, because like we shared with you, Will, we just opened up. In fact, we opened up just very recently, only on Tuesday, or 2 days ago. Not totally open up yet, but at least now we can remove our mask. Okay, I know in parts of US that's already a long time ago. Yeah. So we are coming back to the new norm, and hopefully, in the time to come, we can get to see one another, including meeting Will. By the way, which part of the States are you in?
I'm near Seattle. So in the
Seattle, all right.
So it's not
less in Seattle.
Yep, exactly right. So it's still right. a bit of a trip to Singapore, but well worth it. I look forward to wandering around the gardens by the bay and the botanical gardens again at some point.
And I long to go to US.
Yes. Well, the grass is always greener. Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So thank you everyone for joining the session. I hope it has been useful for some of us. Thank you for the friends that we meet. Thank you, Will, and all the rest of us. So take care and continue to stay safe. All right. And remember, prepare yourself, because the market is opening up again, and let's go out there, not just to make money, but to transform lives. All right. So everyone have a good night. Thank you.